I can't tell you like there's a written page of rules, but I can tell you that in the amount of meetings that I've sat in where I've been the guy to say that's not Fast and Furious, that's not Fast and Furious. People get tired of me saying that.
Really? So but there's actually crazier shit that you think is too far-fetched.
Tickets are on sale for KFC Radio Live. Click the link in the bio. Get yours. Come out and hang with the boys.
This all was birthed from John's love of the Fast series.
Yes, and I watched the car crash. I watched the car crash count. I watched some of that other stuff they do. I thought was really cool. It had flashbacks, created flashbacks for me, and not the good kind, but yeah, it was good.
What's the bad kind?
It's just, you want to start it? Are we taping?
Yeah.
Okay. When I watch these movies, which is hard for me to watch, what I see is, okay, there's the movie. I know where I was standing while that was being filmed.
Right.
And I know all the like Mishigosh and all the stuff that was going on at that particular time that everybody else doesn't see. So that's what I kind of flash on and think about.
Do you ever enjoy any of the movies you worked on then? Because I would imagine every movie is.
Yeah. I do. I'd say, look, 90% of it is great. 10% of it is just fucked up because it's just, we're dealing with a lot of people.
A lot of egos.
A lot of egos, but not only that, just the, whether it's weather, whether it's logistics, whether it's government regulations, whether it's studio wanting us to do something, whether it's just anything, that could be happening. I'm always, I'm surprised that my neck can still work because I'm always looking down at my watch. It's like, are we going to finish in time today? Or are we going to be able to move on to the next location that we have to be out of this location in time and we can't go back? Sometimes I know I have a release date coming up and I've got to get the movie finished. So how's that going to happen?
We see the Hollywood car crash. You remember the Twisted Metal.
Yeah, I will say in Fast 5, the pulling of the safe out of the building and the chase through Rio, which we actually shot a lot of that in Puerto Rico. Standing on the set of that, though, while we were doing that, has got to have been one of the greatest things that any producer could have actually get to see happen, because this wasn't like VFX. This was real shit we were doing. And it was the craziest shit that I'd ever seen in all the movies I ever made. Like what we actually did to the cars, to the streets, to the city. Like it was metal on metal, metal on concrete, metal on anything. I mean, it was crazy.
Well, so here's your answer. John, we were talking about this the other day, right? I think the question was more, what is the most like bombastic, unrealistic, crazy, fun part of the franchise? And we were talking about the cars going through the skyscrapers and the Rock throwing torpedoes. But I think that's got to be your answer if the producer himself says the safe in Rio. That's it.
Well,
right
I wouldn't say that was the most kind of outlandish, most craziest thing. But what it was it was the most visceral thing that, obviously we didn't jump a car from a skyscraper to a skyscraper, but we actually on the ground built, part of two buildings and actually did a jump, but we weren't, 100 stories up in the air. So we did parts of that were real, and then we put it into the landscape of two skyscrapers. So a lot of that stuff is a combination of visual effects and real. And what we've always kind of prided ourselves is trying to do this stuff as real as possible. Now, obviously, because of safety and just a lot of other reasons, we can't do some of the stuff. But when I tell you when I was standing there on the streets of Puerto Rico and watching that happen, like I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually getting to do this. It was incredible. I mean, honestly, the best part of getting to make, whether it's all the Fast and Furiouses or the Jump Streets or the Sonics or the I Am Legends or just whoever, is the fact that I've really got to see the world. whether it's during the making of the world or the publicizing of the making of the movies or the publicizing of the movies, that to me is my favorite part of the whole thing. Is like I've been everywhere and met people, from everywhere, and that to me has been the benefit of getting to do these movies.
I appreciate that you stopped after listing only 4 of the mega movies and franchises you've done, because you've been gracious enough to give us a half hour of your time. We could do a whole half hour just listing everything amazing you've ever done. It's crazy. Your resume the total
grossing of your movie is $11 billion. It's like dozens and dozens of movies. You just in what you listed alone, which was a fraction. I mean, I'm speechless because I'm like, I don't even understand, how does something like this come about? Like your first movie was the first movie Juice that you produced?
It wasn't the first, but it was very, very early on. I had done a couple of movies for HBO. It's funny you should say that, because my son, who goes to Northwestern, and his girlfriend, who goes to Northwestern, she's actually from New York. They found out that tonight at the Hammer Museum, which is just down the street from us in LA, they're actually doing an outside a showing of the movie Juice. And he's 21. He's never seen the movie Juice, but he can't believe, he and my daughter can't believe that I actually knew Tupac. And I was like, yeah, I kind of discovered him and mentored him, and actually was at the fight with him. That night where he was killed. So I have a long history with that. So yeah, that was one of the first movies I did, and I have always just tried to make movies about subcultures, going into worlds that just intrigued me, that maybe I didn't know. Maybe I knew a little bit about, like street racing. I know a little bit about, but I didn't know a lot about. But it was just a world, whether it's hip hop in Harlem, whether it's underground street racing, whether it's about being a SWAT police officer, whether, I like things where I get to enter into worlds that I know, that intrigue me. I'm curious. And that's kind of has led me to a lot of the movies that I've done and TV shows.
Were you the one? I read, I think it was before Fast 9 came out. I think Entertainment did an oral history with a lot of the cast. And that's where I learned that this was all born of, I believe it was an article in Vibe magazine.
Yes, it was.
Is that where
I was making a movie at Universal with Paul Walker called Skulls, which was about kind of the secret societies at these Ivy League schools. Josh Jackson and Rob Cohen, who directed it, who I did an HBO movie called The Rat Pack, about the Rat Pack that we were nominated for. This article was given to me, and I thought it was really interesting. And I knew Rob had that Paul had a love for cars, as did I, and that's how it kind of all started. And then when we were trying to cast the role of Dominic Toretto, the studio really wanted Timothy Olyphant, who they said, if you get Timothy Olyphant, we'll greenlight the movie. And we went to Timothy Olyphant, and he said no. Couldn't believe he actually said no. And then I came up with the idea. I'd seen a Vin's movie that he had done for Sundance Strays, and I said, we got to go get this guy. And had this kind of infamous meeting between me and him at this kind of Hollywood hotspot called Kate Manalini's. The restaurant's no longer there. I went there to meet him, thinking that I was kind of, meeting him to decide if he was the right guy. Little did I know that he was really interviewing me. It was that kind of scenario. Really? So that's where it all really started.
Did you know, how quickly did you know? Because in that oral history, which I'll probably reference a few times here, but there was a cool story I remember, I think Vin telling, where him and Paul Walker went down to, the movie had been pushed because you guys wanted to make it the summer blockbuster. I think it was supposed to be a March release, and then you guys. Yeah,
we didn't necessarily think it was going to be a blockbuster. We wanted to release it in the summer because we thought it felt like a summer movie that it could kind of break through because it was different. So that's how that happened. But we didn't know we did a test screening at this theater where I used to do them all the time, called the Winnetka Theater out in Thousand Oaks. And we screened the movie for the first time, and people went nuts. And when we really knew we thought we had a hit was after the screening, we went out into the parking lot and there were all their kids in their cars doing, donuts and circles and racing. And I was like, oh my God, we might have something special here. And that was really the first inkling that the movie was going to work. I never thought we'd be doing 10 movies later at that particular point, but I did feel like we had something that could break through.
It was, I remember coming home. My dad picked me up from me and my friends. We were probably 12, 13 when the first Fast came out. And so
that's
my dad
crazy. You're 34 now, dude. That's not.
And my dad picked up me and my friends at the theater, and we were just in the car talking about how awesome it is and how great it was. And like you could almost sense my dad get jealous and drove so fast the whole way home. And then there's this hill in Fall River called Seven Hills, President Ave. And he was driving up fast, like trying to get air on the things. And I had loved the movie. And even I was like, oh, this is a bigger thing than just me enjoying this movie. Like this is inspiring a dad to show his kids that he's cool.
I think it was I think that was a common thing that happened. Like, the amount of stories and things that we've lived. I mean, look, I had made movies before, a lot of movies before, and I had made a bunch of movies after, but I think kind of forever, like, I'm going to be linked to the Fast and Furious as kind of a defining thing for me. I mean, it's been 22 years of my life. I didn't have either of my kids when we first started. I wasn't married when I first. So I've kind of been able to, with each movie, mark some personal milestone as well, which has been kind of a really interesting thing for myself.
I remember in that, Vin was telling me a story about how I guess him and Paul had been sent to Mexico, I want to say, to promote it.
Yeah, I was there.
You were there?
Yeah, I think it was MTV Spring Break, something or another. And that was in that day, like if you could get on MTV to promote your movie, that was the biggest thing. Like today, it doesn't mean anything. But then, like if you were on TRL or Spring Break, like that was how you got to everybody. So I remember we flew down there and like we were on this plane that like I thought we all thought it was going to crash for sure. I mean, it was crazy.
Vin said that they were in the airport afterwards, and Paul was like sitting on the floor charging his phone or whatever. And he said he looked over at Paul and was like, people were like stepping over them and was like, appreciate this anonymity right now, because once this movie drops, it's gone. To know that right away is insane to me. And like to just feel like, so I guess like when you hit a baseball and you're like, oh, that was a sweet spot. Like once this movie was made, you was like, we got it.
Yeah. Did you know that was going to happen? I mean, I know you said, so like you knew you felt something. But like,
no, I knew we had I knew we had something that was resonating. I knew we had something that was going to do business. I had no idea by any means that this could make 10 movies, let alone a sequel. Like we just didn't know what we had. We knew we had something fresh and cool, but like, think about it. The first movie was a very domestic based movie, which means most of our box office came out of the United States. Okay. And as the movies have gotten, as we've made more of them, it switched to where now most of our box office comes from everywhere outside the United States, which is a very unprecedented thing for a franchise to go that way. So no, we didn't know. We knew we had something, but we didn't know we had this.
Okay. So when did you know then, like, two things that I think are very a lot of movie viewers kind of relate it to the Fast series. When did you know that it was like we're just gonna keep going? Like I feel like the first couple sequels we didn't have the full cast, and then people kind of came back. So like when it was the return, was it sort of like, all right, we're gonna go 5, 6, 7, 8, like we're gonna.
Well, I think the key was when we convinced Vin to come back in number 3 and do the tag and the end credits at the end of the movie, that it was able to be like launch it. That helped launch it again. Then 5.
So how do you get there? Like, how do you lose him and then bring him back? Was that like?
Well, what happened was in for number 2. There was a little bit of a disagreement between what the studio wanted to pay him and what he wanted to get, and also myself and Vin and Rob, the director of Fast and Furious 1, had already committed to go do XXX.
Got it.
Okay, So we went to do Triple X, and the studio wanted to keep going fast. So I was doing both movies kind of similar times, which put me in a little bit of an awkward situation, but was fine. And then after 2, there's, which did better than 1, but they're like, how are we going to keep going? We came up with this idea to kind of go a little smaller and do Tokyo Drift. And then when we finished Tokyo Drift and we screened it, we were like, the movie's great, but man, if somehow we could tie it into the mothership kind of, and that was a way to kind of continue it into another direction, that by getting Vin to do that allowed us to keep going and get bigger. And then when we did 5, we went from a little car racing movie to kind of a big international heist action movie by bringing The Rock in. And then the unfortunate passing of Paul Walker made 7 the biggest. So it was always kind of zigging and zagging.
Yeah. And the other thing I think that people associate with the franchise is that you guys don't take yourselves too seriously. Like, we know what these movies are about. We know that, it seems that people can come back from the dead. It sounds like we're going to eventually go to space and land on another planet, all that sort of stuff, where I think in the past movie, maybe producers and directors are like, we can't do that. It seems like you guys are like, let's just
look, they want. We have our kind of Fast and Furious rules that we try and abide by, that, unfortunately we've probably broken a couple times.
Yeah. What are those rules? Give me the number 1 rule.
The space thing was really breaking the rules for me. Okay. But yeah, that went too far for me, but there's a number of extenuating circumstances as to how that happened. But I can't tell you like there's a written page of rules, but I can tell you that in the amount of meetings that I've sat in where I've been the guy to say, that's not Fast and Furious. That's not Fast and Furious. People get tired of me saying that.
Really? So there's actually crazier shit that you think is too far-fetched? Yeah,
I do. And obviously it's a movie about family, and that's really the heart of it all. I know you've done scorecards of how many times we've said the word family, which, I wish we probably wouldn't say it as much as well. But I think that.
No, but that's what, all that stuff is good, Neal. Like, that's what.
Yeah, I agree. What I'm saying though is that I love all that stuff, and that's the stuff that kind of binds everything together. And I think that the truth be told is that I think the reasons that this series has worked so well is, 1, everybody could relate to getting their first car and the independence that it's given people, and when you get your first car, and 2, everybody, no matter if you have real family or you've created family, I think that is a very, very important common thing that people want in their lives. And also we're probably the first movie, or one of the first movies that the cast embraced everybody, no matter what ethnicity you were, what the color of your skin, we didn't care. And honestly, it wasn't like, we're going to hire an African American, we're going to hire an Asian American, it was, no, we went to these underground racing events, worlds, and we saw who was there, and we were just mirroring that in what real life was. It would have been fake if we weren't doing that. And what bothers me is a lot of these movies or TV shows where they just throw somebody in from every ethnicity, because they think that's going to draw people in. But in reality, if it's not what's real, I don't think it works.
Right. I agree with that. And it's actually interesting to hear you say what you say when you speak up in meetings. That's not fast. I agree with you on everything. And I feel like that's not the stereotype, I guess you'd say, about how a Hollywood producer is. I feel like in my head, they're the one always escalating things. And to hear you say, like, you have, from what I'm gathering right now, a very strong grasp on what the fast voice is. And it wasn't a major thing for me, but I also was like, I don't know if I'd have gone to space. Like, it was cool that it was fun. It wasn't a bad thing.
Here's the thing is, we attempted something that could have been amazing. In hindsight, maybe we shouldn't have done it, is all I'm saying. But you don't, if you don't risk things, sometimes you don't get rewards. So I'm glad we did it, but maybe went too far there.
let me.
So you could probably say that I know that I feel like space was kind of an internet thing, and I feel like you could say, in your opinion, there will be no dinosaurs. That's another thing they say is the Jurassic
not as long as I'm around. No. No. I mean, maybe if we were doing a spoof, then sure.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned getting Vin back. What was the process like for getting The Rock back? Because obviously, no spoilers, but pretty big end tag in Fast 10 with. By the way, sorry to interrupt myself. Did you use a body double for Dwayne in the before he takes off his mask? I felt like he was too skinny. When the end tag starts, I'm like, that can't be The Rock. He's too skinny.
No comment.
Good eye, Johnny.
But was that a pretty simple process to get everyone back together, or was that
no?
I can't imagine.
Here's the thing: is nothing is in making movies today. Nothing is simple, and that I don't mean just Fast and Furious. I'm talking about in general. Making movies is very complicated. A lot of variables, a lot of different people involved, a lot of egos, a lot of everything. And my job as the producer is try to push the ball up the hill all the time, and everybody else is pushing the ball downhill. I look at each movie as my client, and all I'm trying to do is do what's best for each particular movie without looking at any other thing except for what is best for that particular movie. And that's the way I operate.
I have always heard the story about it was like contractually written that if The Rock gets punched, then Vin Diesel has to punch him back. If I go through a table, you've got to go through a table. Is that stuff true?
No, that's a lot of that stuff is just fabricated stuff that people put out there.
I was going to say
they're both professionals, and I think that's taken it too far.
I read that article. I think it was the Washington Post who did that article, and it was like, if someone goes through a wall, the other person will go through a wall. And then in my times watching that article was a few years ago. In my times watching the movies since then, I've paid attention to that, and I'm like, that just doesn't even happen. How could like that? That's not what
we try. Here's the thing: is we try and make really good, entertaining fights, and for me, good, entertaining fights is a lot of back and forth. One guy is winning, one guy's losing, one other guy's winning. That to me is what makes it interesting. So what we're just trying to satisfy the audience ultimately, and so that's to me what dictates everything is what the audience wants.
So just going back in general to what you were describing as a producer, because I think it's a little bit confusing for an average movie viewer.
Here, I'll tell you what a producer does. I always equate it to something that most average film moviegoers can understand is, okay, it's like being a building developer. Okay, I find a piece of land. Okay, I find a script, an idea, a book, a play. Okay, the building developer finds the land. I find an idea in whatever form that is. Okay, they hire a contractor, a builder to build that building. I hire a director, and they hire construction workers. I hire my crew and cast, and then they build the building. We build the movie, and then they either sell the building or lease the building. We sell the movie and sell tickets. It's a very similar job. So for me, I'm the first person on the movie and the last person off the movie. Like, we are there from beginning to end. We start with nothing. We climb a huge hill. We finish. We sell tickets, and then we start again at the bottom of the hill.
And
it's a very daunting process to think that you work on something for years and you scale a huge mountain, and now you got to start again. At least with sequels to the movie, you're a few floors up, starting.
Right.
You're not starting from scratch.
How do you do so many goddamn good movies? Like, I mean, it almost feels like you're a name that should be known by every American in every household. Like, the movies you've done are so good, and so many of them. yet I feel like you're still so behind the scenes. I feel like you should be, and I'm sure within the industry you are.
Honestly,
you're like movie royalty.
I like to stay anonymous. I like to do my thing. I like to do my thing. I feel like I've got great relationships with the filmmakers that I've worked with the studios that I worked with. They all know me. They know what I do. I kind of like to let the work and the box office
speak for itself.
Be the thing that speaks for itself. And I would never want to be famous. Like, it's just not my thing.
But beyond the fame thing, like, you don't even have a miss. You don't even have a flop. Like,
I have plenty. I have plenty of them.
Maybe by your standards, but Jesus.
But I will say is, okay, I would rather not make a movie than have a miss. Okay, because when that movie comes out and it doesn't work, it's so painful. It's a painful experience when you spent all this time and all this money, and and your investors have put up all this money, and the movie comes out and it just drops dead, and you lose them a bunch of money and so on. Now, the good news is luckily, in terms of, like, if I was in the Major League Baseball, I'd be in the Hall of Fame because my batting average would be way better than that. So
your batting average would be like 900, Neal.
Yeah. Teddy ball games 406 wouldn't be that impressive anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like I've got a good track record in that way, but I've definitely had misses, and those definitely hurt. So I will say that any time that I've made a movie, probably because the financial deal was so good, I think that those are the ones that really haven't worked. And ultimately, I did those movies for the wrong reasons. So, I've learned my lesson in that way, and I won't do that anymore.
Were you mentioned to start Jump Street? Were you on the infamous email from Channing Tatum? I believe I thought he sent it to producers. I think it came out. It was, I think Jonah Hill talked about it, where it was just a bunch of ha 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 ha, suck my dick after like the opening weekend of the box office.
Yeah, I remember that email. I don't remember the exact words, and I probably should find it.
Yeah.
But yes, I do remember that, and it was a very exciting time for all of us. Like, here's the thing: was when we announced that we were making Jump Street, there was a huge amount of cynicism. Oh, they're rebooting another stupid TV show. Well, isn't Hollywood have any fresh ideas? Blah 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 blah. It was all negative. And I made the decision at that point in time that we weren't going to do any publicity. We weren't going to show anything to the public. There was nothing going to come out until we had a piece of material, a trailer, that just once people saw it, it was game over. People were never going to be cynical again. And that's what we did. I remember the first trailer came out. People were like, oh my God, this is so fucking funny. This combination of these two guys is amazing. And that turned the tide. It's not that dissimilar. Like, I had a reverse experience when we did the first Sonic the Hedgehog, and our first trailer came out, and we had maybe the most views that Paramount has ever had for a trailer was for that Sonic trailer. The problem was everybody who saw it thought it sucked. And I was like, that was one of those terrible moments where I tried to turn lemon to lemonade. And I had this big meeting with the Paramount and SAG executives and said, look, here's the good news. The good news is nobody's ever had so much interest in anything. The bad news is that people hate what they see. So if we can turn that around, then, I think we can do it. And so we came up with a plan, which was, we're going to have to delay the release of the movie. We're going to have to spend a bunch of time and money to bring the character of Sonic back to the way that people wanted it to be. And luckily, once we did that and released that new trailer, everybody felt heard and really embraced the movie. And that was like a first in Hollywood where we had actually listened to the fans and, kind of turned it around. And then, obviously the movie works, and we made number 2, and now we're about to go start number 3, which I'm very excited about.
Your call specifically? You made that decision?
Yes, I did. I made that call.
Fucking A, man. That's a ballsy call, because as much as it seems common sense, let's listen to the fans. and do what they want and everyone will be happy. There's a fine line because a lot of times, people are stupid and they're not movie makers and they don't know what it takes.
Honestly, I felt terrible because the chairman of the board of Paramount Pictures at the time was somebody who was the guy who brought me in, the guy who trusted me and gave me all this money to make this movie, and same with the Sega people. And I kind of felt like I had really let them down. And I was just like, but we quickly came up with a plan that was going to, we felt, work. The problem is that, we had lost a little bit of credibility because we told them the other thing was going to work. So it was really, there was a lot riding on that decision. And, thank God when we redid the trailer, we redid all the stuff of Sonic character and released the next trailer. People embraced it, which was a very, very fulfilling thing.
That was one where I almost have my Vin Diesel call the show. We've had Ben on the show many a time. And I remember after I saw the first Sonic, Ben was coming on the show. And I think I told him on the show, I was like, dude, I'm not even much of a video game guy. I don't see too much largely animated stuff. And I was like, dude, I saw this. I love this. This is going to be a massive franchise. And he's on his story. He did his, I hope so kind of deal. But
the hard thing is before that, there really had been no video game that had been turned into a movie that was one, creatively successful, or two, financially successful. And we were lucky enough that on both those fronts, we were able to live up to what we needed to do. And, I can't believe that I'm going to make number 3 right now, but I'm actually incredibly excited about going to make it.
I mean, that alone right there would be like a Hallmark career. And that's just a fraction of what you've done. It's absolutely crazy. Is that a little bit of opening Pandora's box, though? Like, is that something now that you're going to, like, if you put out a trailer for another movie and it gets panned, do you change it? Do you listen to social media? Do you listen to these? Because what you said about
I listen to
worlds have a lot of fans who have a lot of opinions, and if you cater to them all the time, it might get dicey.
I mean, here's the thing: is I listen to everything, and I look at everything, and read everything, and see every movie, but ultimately, when it comes down to it, I do everything based on my gut instinct. So I kind of try and take it all in and then go from there. And my gut instinct was telling me that, we could make it right on that other situation. And I can't tell you that my gut has been correct every time, but it's my best barometer by far. When I overthink things too much and I don't end up really making the greatest decisions versus like whatever my gut kind of tells me, I really do try and
go. You might have the best gut in the world, like the best gut in the history of humans. I mean, your track record is just that crazy, Neal. It's wild.
It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. And I like doing the TVs. I like doing the TV stuff we're doing as well. So that's
Boys.
fun.
Yeah, I feel like the Boys has been
the Boys
a hit as any blockbuster movie.
Boys has been incredible. And that was one of those things where we started off, we were going to make it as a feature. We ultimately thought it'd be better as a TV. Nobody really wanted to make it. We convinced Amazon to make it. And then it's probably their biggest show. And now we're off. We just finished shooting, the sequel, the spinoff called Gen V, which will be out later this year, which is incredible. I love it.
Are there
we're shooting.
Are there streaming platforms passed on it?
I mean, honestly, nobody wanted an original end, but can't blame them. It was pretty weird. It was pretty weird. It was, obviously there'd been a lot of superhero stuff in the market, but I thought we were able to differentiate our I think The Boys is very different than any other superhero stuff. And I'm just really glad that we got to make it. And it's seen by such a wide audience. I mean, so many people come up to me about Absolutely. That, but I love making SWAT and
SWAT.
We're making a lot of other TV stuff right now, which, is exciting.
It's incredible. We're already over our time. I feel like I could talk to you for 3 hours. I guess I want to just thank you for your time. We'd love to have you back on whenever you have another half hour. I imagine you're very scheduled. We just got a text. We're at 3. But I mean, thank you so much. It's been
all right. Well, thanks for taking the time, and I appreciate your fervor and enthusiasm of Fast and Furious.
Do my numbers sound accurate to you?
Which one? About the amount of cars?
Yeah, I think it was about 96 per movie.
You know what? I'm sure there's some that have been a lot more and some that have been less. I know that our car budgets are huge, so I'm sure you're right.
Fate did a lot of the heavy lifting there because of when Cypher kind of takes control of all the cars in New York City. That one had about I think 250 or 300 in that one. But it was the safe in Rio must have had a lot of them too. Safe had a lot, but to be fair to that, a lot more destruction of property than you'd think. And there's a ton of destruction of property, but the cars I was only counting cars I'd see. Like at the end of 7, when there's the is it 7 or is it 8? I forget. But when there's the fight on the rooftop, and Vin and Jason Statham are going at it, whole parking garage collapse. I didn't pretend how many cars were in there. That was only the 5 on kind of deal. So it was only visible cars, but 96.3, I believe, was the number.
We'll try and break that the next one. We'll try and bring up that average on the next one.
Before we, I got one more question.
Sure.
With the rise of artificial intelligence, is that something you plan on using? I know some fans have talked about trying to do something with Paul Walker. I feel like that would probably border on, maybe insensitive or inappropriate. But in general, is that something you plan on implementing?
I mean, I think in the right application where it supplements things or makes things better, but from starting from scratch, doesn't really interest me. I think that human emotion can be seen through human actors, and that's what I'm interested in, connecting to an audience.
Yep.
You got the best gut in the business, I think.
Okay. Follow that one.
All right. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Neal.
Have a good one.
All right, big thanks for watching. If you made it through this whole episode, that means you should be subscribed. There's so many of you out there who watch and don't subscribe, so make sure you are a KFC Radio subscriber. Make sure you get all the content when it drops. Click that button now.
I have 9 fingers. I'm still subscribed. It's that easy.